Okay, so we are going to look at color grading and balancing. So we're going to go back into Adobe Bridge or Lightroom. We're going to go to the folder where we told Deep Sky Stacker to output and say we found our file here. It's usually going to be labeled as like autosave TIFF. I've put this one in here, and sometimes whenever you output this file, it might be highly colorized. It might be this kind of like orangey or yellow, or sometimes it might be like bright red if you've been shooting through like a hydrogen alpha filter. But let me open this up and we'll bring it up in Camera Raw. Say for instance you do have a pretty heavy color cast to your linear image. You know, don't worry, because this is something that can easily be fixed. The first time that I saw this, it really kind of freaked me out. I thought that I had done something wrong, and basically what this comes down to is a lot of times it's your white balance setting in your camera. Now, if you're shooting RGB images, that's usually the case. It's usually just the white balance setting in the camera. But say for instance you were shooting through a dual narrowband filter or hydrogen alpha filter, it's very common that this image will be like magenta or kind of a reddish color. In order to fix that color cast, we're going to go up here and we're going to look at our histogram. We've got our blue, green, and red channels, and you can see how they're separated here. So in order to balance this image and get this sky, you know, nice and dark, these need to be aligned. So how we do that, the first process is we're just going to go down to the white balance setting, and we're just going to click auto, and that's going to get them a little bit closer. Or you might try daylight, and that's even a little closer still. Usually daylight is the one that's going to give you the best result. It's going to give you the closest setting. So for instance, if I'm shooting with a DSLR, I usually set my camera's white balance to daylight, and then from there we're going to go into our color temperature slider, and we're just going to slide this blue value down a little bit. Say for instance, if you slide it towards the yellow, you can see how much it separates the channels here, but we're going to slide this back over and start to align this up with the green and red. And this histogram, at least in Camera Raw, this section where it turns white, that's where your channels are overlapping properly. So if we adjust the tint, which is the green and magenta slider, that's actually pretty close, but let's see if I can get it a little closer. And as you do this, you'll start to notice that your image will start to look more natural. It'll take on, it's usually going to be kind of a gray or dark gray. Sometimes it'll be black, but usually it'll take on this dark gray color. And I think for the most part, this is going to be about as close as that we can get it. Now these other sliders down here, they can also affect how these channels will line up. Say for instance, if I move into the contrast slider, we can see how if we're adding more contrast, it's going to darken the sky. It's almost like a levels adjustment there. I'm going to undo that. Your blacks value here is also kind of like a levels adjustment, or you can even go into your curves adjustments if I wanted to lower the highlights here. But generally speaking, I usually don't do this in Camera Raw. I usually wait till I get into Photoshop to do my Astro stretching part. So we're gonna skip that, and that's pretty much it for color grading. The next steps here will be in Photoshop.